Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. I'm Ladi Williams. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. Nigeria's inflation rate hits 34.60% in November, representing a 2.64% rise month on month. And Ghana's first post-election T-bills auction marks a notable rebound, recording an oversubscription of 1 billion Ghana cedis. And Bitcoin Santa rally seems to be in place with a new record high of $106,000. It's great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's get a check on what's playing out with major markets we track now, starting with gold. See, gold prices inch higher today as investors anticipate a potential interest rate cut. That's for the last meeting in 2024, and we see that's $2,652 per ounce for spot gold, up 0.1%. But on the flip side, U.S. gold futures, that's down about 0.2% at $2,670. All eyes on this market there. That's for the metals market. Spot silver, that was flat at about $30.54. Other metals like platinum, palladium, that's holding up. Palladium 0.4% up, $956 per ounce. Then we see silver unchanged. Platinum 0.3% down. Let's get a check on the oil market now. Oil futures eased from their highest levels in weeks as investors are also awaiting the meeting there for the Federal Reserve later this week for indication of further rate cuts. Investors want to know what's going to happen with rates in the U.S. Going forward. $74.01 a barrel. That's 0.64% down. For Brent WTI, the U.S. grade still holding on to that $70 psychological level. We're down a big 0.86%. Still tracking oil prices at this point to see where the markets go. To other stories, Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company Limited, as a subsidiary of Shell PLC, has announced a final investment decision on Bonga North, a deep water project off the coast of Nigeria. The Bonga North project involves drilling, completing and starting up 16 wells and modifications to the existing Bonga main FPSO and the installation of new subsea hardware tied back to the FPSO. The project will sustain oil and gas production at the Bonga facility. Bonga North currently has an estimated recoverable resource volume of more than 300 million barrels of oil equivalent and will reach a peak production of 110,000 barrels of oil a day, with first oil anticipated by the end of the decade. And inflation in Nigeria continues to climb, reaching 34.60% in November 2024. This sharp increase, according to latest data from the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, reflects a significant rise in the cost of living across the country. Headline inflation figure represents a 0.72% increase from the 33.88% recorded in October. We'll give you more details on this latest data as we get them. And more reaction to trailing Dangote refinery exporting PMS to other African countries such as Cameroon, South Africa, Angola, and Ghana. This time focuses on pricing, and earlier I had a chat with the Chief Operating Officer and Country Manager of Trade Grid, Mr. Jide Pratt, and he believes reduced freight costs would be positive for African fuel importers. Take a listen.
The deeper your draft is, so every time you can bring in a larger vessel, you have more efficiencies. Most of these African countries do not have a large draft or a deep draft. So they have to try and, let me say, multiple handling. So you move from a big vessel to a small vessel to a smaller vessel, just to be able to come into your draft. When this happens, you're handling so many different charges, and that is what lifts most of the prices across West Africa. What this does for the Dangote refinery and for them is that the first things first, it reduces distance in terms of freight. Imagine coming in from Europe on a large vessel, getting to Africa, doing an STS offshore Lomé, going in with a smaller vessel into your location. Some of these depots are also so small that they can't take a full cargo. So it's now a case of discharge into tank. If you discharge into tank, you wait till the tank is full, move into another tank. Buying from the refinery is two things. And again, I must re-emphasize freight. Once the freight advantage is there, they might also be able to take in smaller vessels into just offshore the refinery and then go straight into their channels. So it does help them. But I think one thing we must also say is that what does this do for Nigeria? We used to be a net importer for so long. So begin to look at the balance of payments. The refinery is earning US dollars. While she has some foreign debts to pay in terms of US dollars, don't forget that she's also going to process some of these transactions through her local banks. So it does mean that that paucity of FX is also something that begins to fade. The more transactions they do, the more US dollar transactions they do and export, then technically more inflows for Nigeria.
All right, so our first conversation now, well, it's all about food inflation at this point, and we have a data platform, a supply chain, and Root Watch. They've released their Nigeria Food Index, supposed to give us an overview on what's playing out with food insecurity in most parts of Nigeria, and how to address most of these issues with data at this point, because you must know what the data is saying before to help you actually prefer the right policies to tackle the issues. Join us for this conversation. We have Mr. Adebayo Adeleke is a founder of Root Watch and is joining me right there from our Abuja studio. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ladi. I wish I could be there with you in Lagos, but situation changed over the course of time. But I'm here. We are here.
Fantastic. Abuja studio just was great.
Discussion about Nigeria food security.
Yeah, so I can imagine what went into putting this data together, covering the whole of Nigeria, telling us points that are not looking too good when it comes to food security, food storage, and all of that. Help us unpack, what the data is telling us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and compliment of the season. So first thing first, Nigeria Food Security Project, which actually has been the one embarking on understanding what the food security layout is all about. We started this in about 2 years ago, but over the course of time, we realized that there is a need to do a deep dive into some of the nuances that we're beginning to see that kind of surface over the course of time. So we set up this Nigeria Food Security Project, and one of our first things to do is to start collecting data, because we cannot solve what we don't understand. And oftentimes, and what I've seen over the course of time I've been around and part of this project, is that we tend to proffer solutions to problems that we don't fully understand. And for us to really fully understand the issue of food security in Nigeria, we have to embark on what are the causes and effect of food insecurity in Nigeria. And that's what led us to publishing the first ever Nigeria Food Security Index. And I know on the global scale, the global entities of the economics and the likes have published a global food security index. But this is the first time an entity like ours has put forth the resources and a lot of analysis thereabout, understanding the causes of food insecurity in Nigeria, understanding what is the Nigerian food security looks like. And that's what we've been able to do for the last 6 months, gathering data. And then what we've done in the process of this is to kind of deviate a bit, because looking at the food security index from the global perspective kind of leaves us out a lot of things, because you cannot use the global kind of lens to be able to understand Nigerian nuances. Nigerian food security has a lot of ups and downs, has a lot of colors, a lot of colorations, if I can use the word to actually explain our current food security kind of predicament. So that's what we did. So we injected about 7 different areas. We included poverty level, we included change in food prices, we included food storage capacity, we included what are the food requirements per state, we included the population of state, we also included the income rate and all these things. All these factors actually describe the nuances that surrounds Nigeria food security. So our intent is to be able to understand what is the problem, what is our current outlook, and then how do we move Nigeria from place of food insecure to to place of food secure. As you look at the chart that's being displayed over there, it tells about, we use how many, number of indigents per state, how people are moving from poor to vulnerable and to not, from poor to vulnerable, from vulnerable to poor, either way, all these things, and the data is out there, and we've used a lot of data published by the Ministry of Agriculture. We've used the data published by MBS. We also gathered data ourselves. For the last 6 months, we've been almost in every state in Nigeria gathering food data, understanding on a day-to-day basis on every market, understanding all the food prices, understanding the food basket that is in almost every home, understanding the changes of it. So the inflation that you mentioned earlier, we're going to see the evaporating effect in the market, actually, more than any place else. Anything that happens in Nigeria, economic-wise, in the formal Nigerian economy, you will find it within 24 hours in Nigeria market. So what you see over there is a food security capacity, as we can see over the, if you're following the Nigerian food security, conundrum, you understand that Nigeria as a country at the federal level has about 33 strategic grain reserves. What we've observed in this research and understanding our food security situation is the fact that most states, I can go on record and say most states in Nigeria do not have secondary storage. And this is what pretty much one of the things that we believe that we can bring us quick wins if each of the states in Nigeria can embark on actually constructing and actually operationalizing secondary storage. Because it's just like demand and supply. If people's demand is met by supply, you're going to have stable food prices. But if demand keeps fluctuating and the supply is not being able to meet up the demand, then we have a significant problem, which we will continue to see over the course of time. And this is not an indictment on any state. The Food Security Index is not an indictment on any government. It's just telling us who we are at a particular point in time. And some of these situations that we find ourselves in the country right now is not, it belongs to this particular administration or not. This has been going on for years. This is not something that started in the last 18 months or 24 months or 5 years. Of course, some of these policies might have contributed to some of this the severity of it, but as we have it right now, this is just our true picture of who we are. And I don't want people to look at it as an indictment. I want people to look at it as this is who we are. And this is not a challenge. It is a challenge, rather, but different opportunities for state and local government to be a key player in bringing Nigeria from place of food insecure to place of food security.
All right. Looking at this data, especially the food storage capacity, I'm looking at states from Taraba, Sokoto, Jigawa, Ebonyi, and the rating for food storage is poor there. And looking at other states you covered, it's all poor. I can't see one state that has a good food storage rating. So you're telling me there's no state in Nigeria that has at least a fairly good storage rating?
Absolutely. As of when this report has been published, and I know a lot of people have kicked back on it, we have some silos here and there, and I'm using the data collected in MBS, data collected by Nigerian Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. As of the time this particular report has been published, there is no secondary food storage in most of Nigerian states. And that is where we need to start actioning up. We need to leave the federal government a bit, because most of food security issues that we have in Nigeria can be solved at the subnational level. And I believe this is a call to action for state governors, state commissioners of agriculture and food security therein, to action to figure out the way to be able to capacitate, rather, their state by building food storage. Because if we can have food storage, and we can store food in cases of glut, and in cases of when prices, we have huge inflation like this, when prices are high, releasing those foods into the economy, into the citizenry, we definitely bring down the food prices, and that will kind of lower a lot of food inflation that we've seen that has skyrocketed over the course of time. Now, that being said, it provides a lot of opportunities. It also provides a lot of conversations. As I mentioned earlier in my travel of this media blitz on a food security index that we just released, every time we talked about food security, people automatically always equate it to agriculture. food security is not synonymous to agriculture. It's completely different, though agriculture is one of the major pillar, if not the main pillar of food security. Like I said, 45% of the issues that happen to food security is agricultural related, but the rest of it, actually, they are not agricultural related. And if you can look at the data we've gathered over the course of time, 60% of our, post-harvest law, principles of agricultural products are subjected to post-harvest loss. And that is telling you that we do not really have significant issue in agricultural production. We have significant issue in being able to move from place of scarcity, from place of abundance to place of scarcity. That is where our major issues are, and this is where the state and local government can come in.
Right.
The road networks that goes in there, the storage facility that goes there. We can actually attack those two areas. The road network, every farm settlement, all farms, states, build more road, accessibility, connecting those logistical corridors, the water, the rail, and the road, connecting them together so that accessibility can be free flow. All
right.
these things have significant impact on how the prices of food is being determined in the market.
Right. Quite an interesting one there. It reminds me of, a time when Joseph in the Bible was placed in charge of very important activities in Egypt. And he did save for the 7 years, of fatness. And that 7 years, what they saved in that period helped them for the 7 lean years, that followed. So, looking at Nigeria, have we ever had an abundant period when it comes to, or some kind of food security? Because these same problems have been with us for the longest time. I remember in secondary school, it was about the problems of agriculture, lack of storage facilities. That was always, part of it. And it's been a while, I was in secondary school. So have we had the time of food security really in Nigeria?
So, I'm glad you brought up the story of Joseph. It's a logistical nightmare. I believe, none of us were around during that time, but I believe what Joseph embarked on over there is a logistical nightmare, but he was successful in it, and be able to kind of store enough food for country of Egypt back then, and not only for Egypt, but the rest of the world, as the Bible puts it. Now, the issue that I've said over the course of time that is plaguing our food security conundrum is the fact that we have, over the course of time, focused on agricultural solutions to solve our food security issues. And we've really done well. We still have a lot of grounds to cover in agricultural production, but I can say categorically with data that I've seen over the last few months that we produce enough to feed ourselves. We can produce enough to feed ourselves, regardless of the climate issues, regardless of whatever we are going through right now. We can produce enough to feed ourselves. But what we are having problems with is the food supply chain, and that has been our Hackley Hills for quite some time. And the fact of the matter is we've neglected this area of food security for quite so long that we so focus on agricultural production. What good is it that you've produced so much of all these foods, but yet there is no way to move it from where it is being harvested to where people need to eat? That is where the problem lies right now. So we have a lot of stakeholders involved, the marketers, the National Union of Road Transport Workers, the aggregators and whatnot. There's so many people in the food security ecosystem that need to play important role in this. And the state and the local government, it is now a call for action for all of them to be able to stand up. If you look at the states, look at the report very well, you see some of the states, the amount they are actually allocating for agricultural production for food security in their state is pathetic, just to say. So if you kind of look at the population of people in each state against the amount of money they've actually allocated for agricultural production, you realize that we are not actually serious about taking food security. And over the course of time, you and I have discussed this issue over the course of the reason why I'm not an agriculturalist. The reason why I got into food security business is because, as a security expert, as a human security expert, it is a function of chicken or egg. What causes our insecurity in Nigeria? Is it food, or is it the insecurity that causes food insecurity? Depends on how you look at it. But one begot the other. And when I start peeling down the layers of why do we have food insecurity in Nigeria, and then why do we have insecurity in Nigeria, it boils down to one thing and one thing only: is food.
Right. And, looking at the Nigeria Food Security Index there for different geopolitical zones, it's mostly weak and very weak, But looking at Southwest, for the Southwest Food Security Index, there's moderate in there, and that's for Lagos. How is Lagos able to be moderate?
So Lagos have put in some measures. As you can see, they've put in the food logistic park in Ekpe, which I believe is a great step in the right direction, but it could be better. Lagos is supposed, depending on the statistics you're looking at, supposed to have between 18 to 20 million people in populations. If this thing, because of course Ekpe has to be a logistical hub in such a way that you can connect people from metropolitan Lagos to be able to get food from Ekpe. But by my own calculation, and look at urban and regional planning, for every 1 million population centric, is supposed to have a food park, just like the one they have in Ekpe. So having one calculated in Ekpe, I don't know how that is going to work out. But again, we're yet to see. I mean, this is the first time a state is going to actually put in forward such bold step and addressing food security issue. And the Commissioner of Agriculture in Lagos State has done a lot of work. They start gathering data and also encouraging integrated farming, gardening farming in a lot of places. Because Lagos have already, Lagos don't have that much arable land like the rest of the southwestern states. Neighboring state, they don't have that much arable land, so they've been able to coordinate with other states for food influx. But the challenge still remains for Lagos, because at any point in time, if anything happens to Lagos, that Lagos is cut off from all the neighboring state, how is Lagos going to feed itself? That's the question. That's the next question that Lagos needs to start answering. That yes, we have this logistical park, we have all these logistical corridors, everyone within Lagos can be fed, but we do not have ability to actually produce food en masse to be able to feed our population. How do we continue to not fully dependent on other states, but also be self-sustained in such a way and in such a manner that we can feed ourselves in case of emergency? Because some of these things they now feed into the overarching early warning signal for Nigeria, because we can start producing and predicting where we're going to have food issues. So if anything happens, let's say flooding in Lagos or whatnot, or across Ogun or Yo, or Ondo, everything, let's say, God forbid, everything, Lagos got cut off for about 3 to 4 months. Can Lagos actually feed itself? It's been cut off for 4 months from other neighboring states. I don't think so. So those are the questions that, though the Lagos have done, massive work to get to where they are, but they're still, yet they've gone far, but yet still short.
Right, and definitely looking at the data, quite interesting, and I can imagine, all that you had to put together to actually give us a snapshot of what's playing out in most of the geopolitical zones. So, looking at this data, how should policymakers use it right now?
Can you repeat the question?
How should policymakers use this data?
I still can't hear you.
So I'm asking how policymakers can make use of this data, because it gives a snapshot on what's playing out in most of the geopolitical zones in Nigeria, and seeing how Lagos is able to stay moderate in the index. What should policymakers be doing right now with this data?
Yes, this data, the essence of Nigerian Food Security Project is to provide a platform in which every state can start having conversations about what is my state food security plan. I can guarantee you not too many states in Nigeria has food security plan. If they do, it's going to be based on agriculture. And that is just missing the boat from the get-go. So this data is out there for every state that is daring, that is willing to share. We are willing to share our data that we've collected over the course of time. We can help them to enhance what they already have going. We can help them plan their food security outlook for now and the nearest future, so that whenever the succession of government from one party to the other, or from the same party or whatnot, there is actually a good footprint that each of them can follow. One of the things that we found out over the course of time is that, when one government comes in and kind of design a template of what the food security plan is, the next government comes in and have the different priorities. But there's a saying in Yoruba that I mean, whenever you remove food out of out of poverty, then you are less, you have less poverty then. So if we can actually address food security at the subnational level, I think we are on the right path to actually have a secured Nigeria. Not only food secure Nigeria, but secure Nigeria, because the number one integrator in Nigeria is not anything else but food. So if we can actually understand the construct around food insecurity and how we can move not only the nation, but each of these subnationals, the local governments, senatorial district, move them from food insecurity to food security. And we can do it. We don't require robots. It's just a concerted effort and a willing mind, political will to be able to drive this effort. And I think we can do it. But again, the data that we have right now is free. We share with any government that is willing to actually partner and be able to we want to actually get healthy in our food security issues. And we can definitely, we are not here to bang on any state government that you are doing wrong. No, we are actually here to help to make sure that we can save every soul a food at a time.
So much to unpack there, and I hope we can actually use this data to make the right policy changes, because I am a foodie. I like my food, so we don't need food insecurity. Well, thank you so much, Adebayo Adeleke, founder Root Watch. Thank you so much for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Ladi, for having me.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head straight to the markets. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Well, let's head straight to the markets. Now we have Will with the details. It's been a while seeing you on this side.
It's always good to be on this side.
Yeah, and this is the week, the trading week.
The trading week before Christmas. It's a special week.
Week is very important. The profits that you make this week
will determine how you spend Christmas.
How dirty your December will be.
It's very correct, Ladia.
That's
you were talking
Christmas.
Yes, you were talking with your guest about, you talked about understanding, you talked about data, the food insecurity data or security data that, our subnationals, as the government, local governments have to understand to be able to drive this growth or change, within this level or in this level. But I'm just hoping that they're not going to be confused. Or the data or the numbers will not confuse them.
Right.
They will actually understand the numbers.
No, there's no confusion there.
Be able to do
it's
this
straightforward.
thing. It's pretty straightforward, right? So let's kick off with the performance of African markets at intraday. We see major stock markets that we track were mostly positive at intraday. Nigeria's NGX is still bouncing off Friday's positive close. Last week, Friday, it regained the 99K level. Today, we're seeing it regaining the 100K level at intraday, up 0.63%. As at the time I took the numbers, we're going to be checking with our analysts to see if that changed. But South Africa, let's look, markets there are closed today for a national holiday, a day of reconciliation. Let's hope we reconcile in this world. Now, elsewhere, we see Egypt's EGX also in positive territory at intraday. Let's look at those numbers, and then we see Kenya's stock market closing Friday's session in negative territory. But let's look at some outlook for the week, some financial data to look out for. We see DMO is targeting today. A 120 billion naira auction is taking place today. MBS is releasing the data, which he has released today. We see those numbers coming out at 4.6%. Now, US Fed, the BOE, the Bank of England, and the Bank of Japan are holding rate meeting this week. Now, let's see those numbers there. We see that's what we're talking about. The DMO is targeting, but this has been released, so it's just been like an updated version. As we've seen in November inflation data at 34.6 from 33.88% that we saw for October. Now, the US Fed, the Bank of England, and the Bank of Japan are expected to hold rates in their decision meeting for this week. A lot of market reaction to that. We've seen some markets closing in the red, but let's see how that goes. We're going to be talking to our analyst. He's going to be giving us more data on that. We're seeing also T-bills markets subdued liquidity in that, but I think Ambrose Omodion is going to be speaking to that. Ambrose Omodion is the Chief Research Officer, Invest Data Consulting. He's going to be sharing more on that. Ambrose, it's good to have you on the program. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're seeing that investors are predicting, some are predicting a choppy week for equities, but we're seeing it regaining the 100K level, and also it's a week before Christmas, very important. And so this is a start. Is this a start of the anticipated Santa rally, or is this just a fluke?
Yeah, for me, Santa Clara is underway already as we speak, because looking at the what we call it, the positive market breadth or expanding breadth, shows that investors are already taking opportunity of correction to position for the year end, and that has started already. Don't forget that in the issue of market, for the past 26 years, market in Nigeria closed in green in 18 years and red in what, in 8 years. As a result of what this Santa Claus rally each year that comes with what the end of the year seasonality. For me, it's not surprising we are seeing the market in this direction. And also, what is very important is that if you are seeing a market that is on the uptrend, what is your own take as a investor or trader? It's the time for you to know whether you have bought in the right time to take profit. And for that, as we enter the new year, we want to see what a little oscillation as before we start seeing the unaudited account results for January 2020, 2026. But one thing that is very clear here that the market is telling that the inflation that just came to that was released recently or today shows you that those in equity are having an edge over those in the fixed income market. No matter how Jewish the fixed income market look like as we speak now, because of trading be around 26. One, I can see that inflation have hit 35% for the month of November. Is that no matter what you are ending, you are already in negative return, no matter how use the result, like I said earlier. But for those in equity that are able to edge against inflation with their stock, the LG index as we speak now is almost slightly below the inflation. But still, the individual stock that have returned more than that, even triple of that of inflation. So that is where it should be. And being that between the month of December and that of April is where we see a lot of activity in the market. Already volume and that institutional investors are really coming back to the market as shown in the volume and also expanding market spread. It puts a good sign that investors are pushing well for this earnings season that are peak in Nigeria that comes between February and March. That is where most companies on the exchange reward investors. For me, this is not time to panic, but rather take advantage of what we call the stupid data that the month of December is already a favorable month in the Nigerian market. For the past 20 years, up in 18 years, it tells you that there is something that goes for the month of December. That means every investor or trader in the market should take advantage of this period and the next 2 months we are entering the new year to make what they have lost in the previous month. Really, market are correct for almost 2 months before we are seeing this kind of move in the month of December. For me, it's a good move for the market. There's no need for panicking, but rather invest intelligently.
But we know that when inflation data is out and we see that uptrend in inflation, it usually affects the real sector because, the CBN is definitely going to hike interest rates. It's going to stay on that orthodox method of hiking rate. We've not found an alternative yet in terms of the fiscal, plans to help to mitigate this. But what are you seeing for the real sector, especially now that inflation is still climbing and the market, we look at, the average man on the streets, prices are galloping. So what do you see for the real sector?
Yeah, actually, before now I said that solving inflation problem in Nigeria is not just a hiking rate. I think this figure that came now also pointed to the CBN or monetary policy to know that they should also look outside of hiking rate. Because even when there's scarcity of money in Nigeria today, we're seeing that inflation is seen. I tell you that it is not because of too much liquidity in the system. But they claim that yes, the money outside the bank are more than the one inside the bank. That for me is not enough for us to keep having a rate hike at the expense of our economy. I'll tell you, the more we're going to increase rate, the more we're going to push a lot of private business out of business because what? Because of cost of funds is high. It's for me for them to look at all those structures, all those structural issues that are affecting our inflation, especially insecurity, and the president they should look at. And also, hiking rates also another way of kind of importing inflation to the economy. For me, this exchange rate is also a problem. That's why we're seeing a little stability in recent days. What high cost of inflation is also important in our inflation. For me, I believe that the monetary policy committee should also look at not hiking rates to solve our inflation problem, but rather let's see how we can address some issue that from the fiscal authority to make that we have a stable board. For me, like I said earlier, for those that are in equity, an advantage because when there is high interest, higher inflation, most companies that are into essential goods can equally push their cost toward inflation to the consumer, which at the end of the day they post a better number and pay a better dividend to their shareholder. That also support their price to go up. That is the board. On the general, I'll tell you that inflation is not good for both fixed income, not good for both stock market, or also for the Nigerian citizen. But another way you can say that for those that are in a fixed market, can take advantage because if companies are going to push their cost to their consumers and make better earnings, pay better dividend, price goes up, it's a plus for them. But I think that our regulators or what we call the economic managers also sit down and look at not hiking rate. Already you are mentioning in this program that we are seeing some climate where they are already cutting rate. Last time, ECB cut rate. Yes, why all eyes are on what the Fed is going to do, either today or next week. Also, I'm telling you, this is the thing that you want to do. You need to be dynamic in your management of the economy, because the more you want to either attract foreign investors to Nigeria because of high interest rate, you are pushing all those local businesses into that, out of the business. For me, it's a way to manage that, because without Nigeria economy, foreign investors will not come in.
Thank you so much, Ambrose Omodion, Chief Research Officer, Invest Data Consulting, for your perspective. We'll be looking forward to see if the government, they're listening, everyone's listening. I hope that we make the right decisions in terms of policy direction for Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time on Business Incorporated. Let's head to other markets now, the Middle East, and let's see how they fared in today's trading session at intraday. Most markets were in the green except for Tadawul, that's in Saudi Arabia. We see Dubai massively up 4.24%. We will be checking in to see what's driving that. Abu Dhabi up 0.09% at intraday. And let's see, within the region, we mentioned Saudi is the only downer at intraday. It was down 0.04%. And we see the Qatari index trading up at intraday. Let's look at markets in Asia. It started the week mostly in the red today, reversing earlier gains as investors turned their focus to key central bank decisions that's expected later this week. Now, the Fed, that's the U.S. Fed interest rate decision, due in the December 19th, is a major event for all markets. Now in Asia, the Bank of Japan is also expected to hold rates, as I mentioned earlier. It's supposed to hold it as it announced the results on Thursday. Japan's Nikkei, we see that reaction there, 0.03%, knee-jerk reaction. People were just, reacting to that, and it's dipping to about 39,457 points. Kospi in South Korea, we see also that dip 0.22%. The economic data is really influencing investor sentiment. We see the Hang Seng Index in China down 0.88%. That's nearly 1%. And we see that China is expected to, release some economic data, and, people are reacting to that. Home prices are going to be affected based on some, adjustments going to be made there. We see Shanghai, that's in mainland China, down 0.16%, and the Nifty 50 in India is also down 0.44%. Now, stock futures, let's look at the U.S. markets now. It was calm on early trade today, with the Dow Jones riding a 7-day losing streak into a week highlighted by a key central bank meeting, which we're expecting on December the 18th. Now, futures tied to the Dow Jones average ticked up 0.11%. We see at 44,385 points. S&P 500 futures up 0.17%, and the Nasdaq futures also up 0.3% in early trade. Investors are on the edge because the central banks are making their moves this week. Decisions from I mentioned the Bank of Japan, Bank of China, and the Federal Reserve, as the U.S. is set to set the tone for markets into the new year. And Ladi, I'm just going to mention this one now because I know you're an Apple fan. Yeah, we just use coming in from the markets that Apple is trying to get into the foldable smartphone, markets. I think they've been left behind. After many years of just minor updates, we know that Apple just changes the case, and then the next thing is a new
maybe
iPhone.
adds a few camera lenses.
Yes, lenses, and then it becomes the new iPhone, know. But right now, they're trying to break, the old ways and come into the new, into the light.
Right, the foldables. The foldables are nice. Yes. They look good. They look sleek.
So what's your take on it? Because I know you're an Apple fan. So what do you think is going to be? How do you think buyers, consumers are going to react to this, or are they going to jump on it?
A couple of lovers, of iPhone and iPhone fans, they've been waiting for that, upgrade for the longest time, and this might be it. We're not sure yet, but at this point, there's reports that they're looking at exploring, those foldables. But who knows? We'll just have to, wait and see at this moment. But I'll definitely love to see, foldable. But when you check the cost of these phones, when they come into Nigeria, prices are not playing.
It's not playing, and that's the problem. We're just hoping that Nigerians can afford it.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Will, for giving us the details there, what's playing out. But let's get a check on what's happening in the UK now. We have Juliana joining us. Great to have you, Juliana. So we're seeing Royal Mail back in the news at this point. What are we hearing?
Good afternoon, Laddie. Yeah, quite a big story here in the City of London is that Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has this morning confirmed that the British government has given approval for Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky's EP Group's £3.6 billion takeover of the Royal Mail owner, International Distribution Services. Now, the deal, including debt, is worth £5.3 billion, and it had been subject to about 7 months of regulatory consultation due to national security grounds. But, for the first time in the firm's 500-year history, it is now going to be owned by a non-Brit. And I think it goes without saying that this is quite a big story here, because Royal Mail and the Post Office is such an iconic institution in the UK. If you think of most postcards or when anybody wants to visit the UK, you do think of the red post office box. But we know that, the letters business has declined dramatically over the past couple of years, particularly during COVID, where most people were turning to packages. Then IDS had a string of industrial action disputes with the Communication Workers Union, who represent frontline workers. So this is a new turn in its history, shall we say, a new chapter. Now, Krasinski, who is pretty well known in the city already, he owns a 10% stake in Sainsbury's. He's also a shareholder, quite a large shareholder of West Ham Football Club. To get this deal signed, sealed and delivered, he had to agree to a series of legally binding commitments, one of which includes the British government having a golden share, which is how it's been described, which basically means the government will have power to disapprove any key changes to the ownership and location and tax residency of the Royal Mail. Kaczynski also had to have an agreement with union bosses to confirm that there would be no job losses for at least the next 5 years. And again, I think there has been an agreement over intellectual property, the branding, the name. So everything we've come to know of Royal Mail will stay that way for the very near future. However, even though the letters business has declined, I think the last trading update we had from International Distribution Services showed that sales in Royal Mail had increased 10% year on year last month. Operating losses have narrowed. So, this is a new chapter, a new phase, a new era. But for the British government, they felt that this deal was in the best for British business.
Definitely, we'll keep tracking to see how that plays out. But it's a fresh new, brand new week right here, and it's a trading week before Christmas. What market moving data are we expecting in the UK?
It is. So we've only got a few days before Christmas, and it's going to be a busy week, very busy week in terms of economic data coming out of the UK. We've got unemployment data due tomorrow, as well as average earnings. I think the Bank of England will be keeping a very strong eye on that. Unemployment still historically and universally low at 4.3%, but it is ticking up each month. And then we've got the last Monetary Policy Committee gathering of the year at Threadneedle Street. Bank of England will be deciding on interest rates. Interest rates came down by 0.25% to 4.75% in the month of November. I think economists have priced in that rates will remain unchanged. Inflation still down in the UK, but it's crept up slightly, but far off from the double-digit highs we had seen much earlier, or shall I say late last year. But there is still some discontent, shall we say, from Rachel Reeves's budget. So there are forecasts that inflation in the UK may tip up by 0.5%. So we're not expecting a rate change this week. And then we've got retail sales and public sector net borrowing coming in before the end of the week. So yes, it's going to be very busy in the run up to Christmas, not just Christmas shopping, but also trying to chomp these numbers as we usually do, Laddie.
Yeah, I guess some investors will be trying to make some last minute gains before Christmas. Well, thank you so much, Juliana, for giving us the update. Thank you.
Thanks, Laddie.
All right, let's take it on to Europe now. See, credit rating agency Moody's downgraded France's credit rating over its political chaos on Saturday. day after French President Emmanuel Macron named his third prime minister this year. Join us now, however, Chimpoda Chibelu. Great to have you, Chip. So what does this downgrade for France mean?
Thanks for having me. Well, Laddie, on markets, this latest downgrade by Moody's is likely to put more pressure on France's government debt. Now, recently, France's sovereign borrowing costs soared to the highest level since the Eurozone debt crisis. And that said, analysts expect the bonds of major French banks to be resilient. Despite France's ongoing political and economic uncertainty, its banks continue to have stellar credit ratings, and their international presence is also helping them. But the political paralysis, especially around the national budget, still poses a risk for French banks. The recent government collapse was due to disagreements over the budget and cost-saving measures. And the consensus of the credit rating agencies is that France needs to lower its sovereign debt. But whether any attempts to reduce government borrowing by cutting some costs can get the support of the far-right and the left-leaning alliance in the National Assembly remains, of course, to be seen. And this political uncertainty could hurt the performance of French bank bonds.
What do you expect from the French economy?
Laddie, part of the performance of France's economy will, of course, depend on whether the government can pass a national budget. The lack of one means that businesses cannot plan. And for those that provide services to the government, they will not know how much spending is set out for 2025. And there's also, of course, uncertainty regarding whether taxes will rise and if there will be incentives for businesses in some sectors. And all of this comes at a time when the French economy is slowing. That doesn't make for a good business climate, and it may put off foreign investors because most of them will be struggling to make sense of the current political climate. This is uncharted territory in France, and businesses would prefer certainty over uncertainty, even if that meant not getting everything they want. At least that would give them the ability to plan.
So what are you seeing in the markets today?
European markets are expected to trade higher today. Now, the latest data from China shows signs of stabilization in the industrial sector in the world's second biggest economy. But retail figures disappointed. So it was a bit of a mixed picture. Now, European trading hours will probably see investors watching ECB President Christine Lagarde. She'll be speaking later in the day. And they'll be also on the lookout for PMI data from Germany and the UK. And in corporate news, wage negotiations at Volkswagen are entering their fifth round. So investors will be looking out for an outcome. A resolution could help VW proceed with its plans to cut costs by slashing jobs and closing factories. But the big news is happening in Berlin later in the day. Chancellor Olaf Scholz faces a confidence vote in the Bundestag, the parliament. Now, a vote of no confidence will trigger federal elections on February 23rd.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so much to look out for right there in Europe there, and Chip giving us all of those details. All right, let's get a check on other stories now. See, Ghana's Treasury bills auction set a strong rebound after a subdued period ahead of the presidential election. The auction, which sought to raise about 6 billion cedis, closed with an oversubscription of about 1.05 billion Ghana cedis, totaling about 7.9 billion Ghana cedis in bids. The bids includes about 951 million cedis for the 91-day bills, 508.15 million Ghana cedis for the 182 bills. And the European Union has banned Air Tanzania from flying to, from, or over its airspace and adding the airline to its updated air safety list. The decision follows an audit by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, which identified serious safety concerns. Though specifics were not provided, the EU has also denied the airline third-party consideration, and that's according to the country operator, and for authorization into its airstream. All right, let's get a check on what's playing out in the crypto market now. We see it's mostly red on the screen, but the major big boys there in the market, that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, fully in the green, with Bitcoin tapping $106,000 for the first time. So we're still seeing Bitcoin there touching new highs. I guess it's in price discovery at this point since breaking $100,000 per Bitcoin, and Ethereum there just a few dollars shy from the $4,000 level, 1.67%. But most of the other altcoins that we track giving up some gains right there in the trading week before Christmas. All right, let's bring in Adeni now, Oluwokoro, who is a financial market analyst. Hello, Adeni.
Hello, ladies. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So how's it looking? It looks like it's going to be that Santa rally for Bitcoin. It seems to be in price discovery at this point, $106,000 touch. And I'm wondering if institutional investors are still going to be buying more Bitcoin at these prices.
Yes, we are going to see an increase with institutional investors, and Bitcoin's record high of 106,000. It signals growing confidence, not just among retail investors, but among institutional players. For example, institutions like MicroStrategy, which already holds about 423,000 Bitcoin, continues to demonstrate strong conviction by purchasing large amounts of Bitcoin. They purchased about 2.6 billion worth of Bitcoin last week. And this trend is also inspiring other publicly listed companies to follow suit. For example, we have Riot Platform, a popular mining company that recently unveiled a $500 million convertible bond to acquire more Bitcoin. And we also have other holdings like Marathon Holdings and Semia Scientific, which have both announced their intention to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet following MicroStrategy's first mover advantage. So we are definitely having more movement from institutions. And some of the interest come from these key factors. Most of these institutions, they see Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation. And also, because of the market infrastructure, with Bitcoin ETF regulations, we've seen improved regulatory clarity and enhanced custodial services, which now makes it safer for institutions to integrate Bitcoin into their portfolios.
It's quite interesting, seeing or hearing the headlines with most of these institutional investors, buying about 5,000 Bitcoins. I try to imagine what that kind of transaction, how it happens, what it looks like. Is it like going to the exchange and you just make an order for 5,000 Bitcoins? Is that how it works?
Yeah, in most cases, they either buy from the big exchanges. They have an agreement with exchanges, especially the US companies prefer to buy from Coinbase. They do have agreements with Coinbase because Coinbase is regulated and listed on NASDAQ. And but for some other institutions that buy outside Europe or within Europe or Asia, many of them just buy directly from the big miners. They just make those big orders. And that the beauty of the crypto space and the blockchain is that you can buy 5,000 Bitcoins and the total transaction fee that you will pay might be less than $5. So it's more or less like they are not spending a lot of money to buy those large purchases. And as long as they have regulatory oversight from their respective countries or jurisdiction, the transaction is just easy for them to do. For example, El Salvador, the South American country, they actually purchase 1 Bitcoin every day. They've been doing it for the past 2 years. So every day they buy 1 Bitcoin. And the country is actually up about $250 million, about $300 million,
right, because
of the rise in Bitcoin.
And I try to imagine if these institutions or countries will finally decide to take profit, I wonder what's going to happen, to the market. But let's look at President Trump now. He's been a major catalyst for this bull run, and he's planning a Bitcoin Federal Reserve plan. Speak to me about the risk and benefits here.
Yeah, I would say Donald Trump's proposal to create the strategic national Bitcoin reserve is ambitious and is also unprecedented. It's going to position Bitcoin as a strategic asset similar to gold reserves, right? And some of the benefits are more or less like economic leadership. We know that the US is the global leader, and by accumulating a lot of Bitcoin, the US would solidify itself as a leader in the global crypto space, especially with strong competition from China and Russia. And also holding Bitcoin would also provide the US a leverage against traditional fiat reserves. And one of the things that the politicians in the US have spoken about it is more or less like holding Bitcoin and making it deflationary also helps because it's going to give the US more money to offset some of their debts, because we know that the US has more than 35 trillion in national debt. And also, with regards to the risk, we all know that volatility, right, the price of Bitcoin, and also adoption dependence. But most of all these risks, I would say US is a country that is capable enough of taking on most of these risks compared to a smaller country like El Salvador. Bitcoin adoption by the US, especially if they're able to create the strategic reserves, is definitely going to spike the price of Bitcoin to unprecedented levels. We might be seeing something like 200K or 250K. And Bitcoin will now be metamorphosing into an exclusive asset where we retail investors might not even be able to participate in the marketing.
All right, I guess we'll keep tracking to see if we get some kind of major Santa rally, with Bitcoin at this point in price discovery mode. Thank you so much, Adeni Oloworokwo. Always great having your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Right, I guess the race to accumulate Bitcoin, most of these countries continues, and most of these institutional investors. I wonder what retail is doing at this point, but that's how most of the markets we track are looking today, the trading week right before Christmas. Hope your portfolio is in the right place. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. From me and the team right here at Channels HQ, it's bye for now.